So now we jump into chapter 2 and 3, which are his personal letters to the leaders of the church in each of those 7 locations, these stars and the candlesticks. And you'll notice that we could spend a lot of time in the 2,000-year-old history regarding Smyrna or Pergamos or Ephesus or Thyatira. That might not be as helpful or as applicable to you today as if we took a moment to step back and look at a 30,000-foot overview of these 7 specific letters given to these 7 churches, because there's a pattern here. You'll notice that God doesn't usually give revelation just to, like we said before, answer curiosity questions.
Or simply to entertain people.
He usually gives revelation when there's a need. And usually the need is driven by what people are doing wrong or adjustments that they need to make. But now watch how God, through this prophet, John, corrects these people. Watch the pattern, because there's a lot to be learned as leaders, as parents, as friends, as associates and fellow disciples of Christ. The pattern is pretty amazing because it gets repeated 7 times. Number 1, God tells them, I know thy works. In all 7 instances, he tells them, I know what you're doing. Basically, I see you. You might think you're doing things in a way that is secretive and nobody knows. And God's saying, I know exactly everything that you're doing. Number 1. Number 2, he gives good feedback to them. He gives them praise. He compliments them on something they're doing well. Now, ironically, that pattern gets broken in the 7th letter, the one to Laodicea. We'll talk about that in a minute. He doesn't give any positive feedback to them, which is an interesting caveat. Tuck that away. We'll come back to it. The third element, when working with people that you're trying to motivate and correct or turn in a better direction, the third thing is he gives the correction that they need. He tells them what they're doing wrong and what they need to work on or do better. And then number 4, he gives them hope and encouragement. So did you notice how the correction is sandwiched between positive feedback in 6 of the 7 cases and all 7 of the cases giving them hope? He never gives corrective feedback followed by, and you're never going to be able to do this. God doesn't work that way, and neither should parents, and neither should leaders or companions or friends. There should always be hope. Never open up a wound too large that you can't sew it back up again to provide healing and correction to go in the positive direction that you've outlined. Then the 5th comparison between all 7 of these, he uses this phrase, he that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit saith. Which to me, I don't know how you want to interpret that. There are a variety of ways to look at that phrase, but for me, it feels like the Lord's saying, you have your agency. And if you choose to plug your ears and choose to ignore what I've just told you, that's your choice. I cannot force you to love me. I can't force you to even listen to me. But if you have ears to hear, let him hear is an invitation to tune our ears heavenward rather than to the noises of the world that Taylor was talking about earlier. And then he always finishes with the phrase, he that overcometh, which to me is the most beautiful aspect of these 6 similarities that occur in all 7 of these letters. He that overcometh puts our focus where? On Christ, not on me. So if I'm actually going to make these improvements in my life, if I'm actually going to adjust and turn to become a better disciple, a more consecrated follower of Jesus Christ, I'm not going to do that alone. I'm only going to be able to do that with the help of he that overcometh. And it's not just that Jesus was able to overcome all things in his infinite atonement. It's that he can, to this day, help me be able to bring some of that capacity to now continue to overcome things to this day. His love and his power can be manifest today, this hour in your life and in my life, if we trust him, if we turn to him, if we look to him.
So what Tyler has modeled is a pattern that you could apply to study these next couple of chapters. There's other ways of looking at the chapters as well. So as you go through these next couple of chapters, you might want to identify what verses refer to which city or which ward, and then where does that 5-part pattern show up in that mini letter to that ward community. And then you might say to yourself, okay, where in my life has God done something similar, recently or in the past, or in the life of somebody that I have seen? Because God often works with similar patterns. And so yes, it's so inspiring to see what God did for these people anciently. But the invitation is, if you look carefully, you will probably see that God has done something similar for you, where perhaps he didn't use these specific words, but perhaps the conclusion of the 5-part pattern at some point in your life was, God overcame on my behalf. So we invite you to see yourself in these scriptures.
So rather than going verse by verse through each of the 7 instructions for these 7 churches, perhaps let's go through at a skimming level and look at a couple of the concepts that are taught that would point us to a temple text. This elevating our thoughts to see how the Savior is trying to get them to take their attention off of the world and focus it on heavenly things, on the eternal perspective, with God and Jesus Christ at the center of that focal point. Look at verse 7. He that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit saith unto the churches. To him that overcometh will I give to eat of the tree of life, which is in the midst of the paradise of God. He's connecting us clear back to the beginning of time, before the beginning of earth time in Eden, with the tree of life in the Garden of Eden, and the promise is that Christ will give us to eat of the fruit of that tree. And if you look in Alma 32, he gives that beautiful analogy in 31 and 32 of the planting of the seed and nurturing that seed. And at the end of that process, you notice what comes? A tree of life springing up unto everlasting life. There's the promise. Look down at verse 10. Fear none of those things which thou shalt suffer. Behold, the devil shall cast some of you into prison that you may be tried, and ye shall have tribulation 10 days. Be thou faithful unto death, and I will give thee a crown of life. Be faithful unto death, you get a crown of life. Well, the one who ultimately fulfilled that was Jesus Christ. So if we're faithful unto our death, we follow his example and we receive in place of the struggles of the world, which could be symbolized by his crown of thorns, and it can then be replaced with a crown of life. So you're noticing in every case this exchange of what the world inflicts upon you, or what we get from the world, death and misery and hell and all of the fallen nature elements, get replaced with these eternal, heavenly, everlasting, beautiful, rewarding elements. The tree of life, the crown of life. Look at verse 17. He that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit saith unto the churches. So this one's to people in Pergamos. I will give to eat of the hidden manna, and I will give him a white stone, and in the stone a new name written, which no man knoweth, saving he that receiveth it. So God is giving all of these promises of things that are going to be granted to these people. The fruit from the tree, the crown of life, the living manna, the hidden manna, and a stone with a new name.
These are incredible gifts.
And you go over to the church in Sardis, verse 4. Thou hast a few names even in Sardis which have not defiled their garments, and they shall walk with me in white, for they are worthy. You're going to be, verse 5, clothed in white raiment, and I will not blot out his name out of the book of life, but I will confess his name before my Father and before his angels. Brothers and sisters, this is one of the most beautiful promises, is that Jesus will confess our name before God if we are willing to confess his name and God's name before the world today. It's a pretty good exchange rate, I would think.
What I love about what we're seeing here, Tyler, is that I think in the popular consciousness that most of us, when we think about the book of Revelation, we think about some fantastical images that are perhaps confusing and perhaps a bit fear-inducing. How many of us have missed the enormous amount of truth and glory that is packed just into a couple of chapters right here? So we hope that as you are in these chapters, you just feel this enlivening that God is not trying to scare us or confuse us. That look at how clear he is expressing himself about what he wants to do for you. He that overcometh, which is Jesus, will give you all things that he has won if you choose to be loyal to him.
And to continue this on, look at chapter 3, verse 7, to the saints in Philadelphia. He says, verse 8, I know thy works. Behold, I have set before thee an open door, and no man can shut it. Jesus in one place says, I am the door to the sheepfold, and no man can come, the enemies can't come in to devour. And I've set before you an open door. Where does that open door lead? Into heaven. And you get this beautiful comparison back to the veil of the temple being the flesh of Christ from Hebrews chapter 10, that he is literally the veil, the door, the way whereby we enter into heaven, and no man can shut it. No man can put down all of the victory that Christ has gained or won in our behalf. Look down at verse 12. Him that overcometh will I make a pillar in the temple of my God, and he shall go no more out, and I will write upon him the name of my God, and the name of the city of my God, which is the New Jerusalem, which cometh down out of heaven from my God, and I will write upon him my new name.